In this lecture, I am going to discuss demodulation for antipodal signaling. First, let me discuss recap of the previous lecture. So we have discussed what matched filters can do for us, and we are now getting ready to discuss how they can help us in designing demodulators for various kinds of digital modulation schemes that we have considered in the past. And specifically we will be discussing today the demodulation of antipodal signaling. So we are going to consider binary waveforms. As I said, in binary waveforms we have antipodal and orthogonal. These two are binary waveforms. An example. So let me consider the antipodal kind like binary phase shift keying. So in this, the example is binary phase shift keying. For orthogonal, binary frequency shift keying. Okay, so let me take this binary phase shift keying or antipodal signaling scheme in this, and then let me recap. So the received signal is given as follows: V of t is equal to V sub r of t real part times cosine of 2 pi f naught t plus the phase shift theta minus V sub I of t times sine of 2 pi f naught t plus some phase shift theta. And I already told you how this theta comes. Suppose you have the transmitter and it transmits the carrier cos of 2 pi f naught plus 0 phase shifter. Now because of the physical distance or physical separation, let's say 1 kilometer or 10 kilometers or 100 meters at the receivers, there is a propagation delay, and because of that there is no phase shift, carrier phase shift. So the received carrier will be, it is not going to be cos of 2 pi f naught plus 0, it is going to be some non-zero phase shift value. And the same expression you can write in terms of r of t envelope times cosine of 2 pi f naught same frequency plus the phi of t plus the phase shift. Therefore the received signal I can represent, this is no passband signal, let me put tilde here. So in the baseband form, the received signal is denoted by V of t is equal to VR of t plus j times V sub I of t and multiply by e power j theta. This is the phase shifter. Now we need to take care of the phase offset. This is the phase offset. The carrier is phase offset with the received carrier, the carrier which you are generating at the receiver, and all you have to do is to compensate for it by multiplying the complex envelope of the received signal by simply e power minus j theta. So therefore this phase and that phase both will cancel each other. And after that in our phase estimation, if our phase estimation is good, we can more or less assume that we have no phase offset effectively, because we have perfectly compensated for it. Of course in real life you will never be able to do this estimation perfectly. Even your carrier circuit carrier recovery circuit will be affected by noise, so it will not be able to do a perfect estimation of the actual phase. But for our analysis, for our discussion, what we will do is we will assume that the carrier is perfectly estimated. Okay, so therefore there will be some phase which is left over, and it will be affect the performance of our system. And at the moment in our discussion, as I said, we will assume that we have a perfect phase compensation. We have very good phase estimator circuit. Therefore there will not be any phase offset. So we will ignore the phase offset, because we assume that we have very perfect phase compensation circuit. The theta is quite to be known to us, provided we do something at the receiver, and that something is carrier recovery circuit. a circuit which is specially designed to track the carrier frequency and phase. So we need to track the carrier frequency and also carrier phase. So we are assuming that such a circuit is in operation at the receiver. Okay, so we have a circuit to find out the carrier frequency and the carrier phase, and from its output we have an estimated theta available, which will be used to compensate for the theta. So this estimation is not going to be perfect in practice, but in practice it will be okay, we will not be able to compensate for you perfectly, and therefore this assumption of zero phase offset will not be a strictly valid parameter in practice. However, we will assume that it is a valid for the present treatment. So this is what I have discussed in the last class, in the last lecture. Now I am going to talk about demodulation for antipodal signals. Demodulation, antipodal signaling. To start with, let me discuss the demodulation of antipodal signals. So I am taking the case of antipodal signals. Okay, the best example for antipodal signal is BPSK, binary phase shift keying. The BPSK is the main example of antipodal signaling in most practical applications. Okay, your general antipodal signal can be defined in terms of an arbitrary waveform. So you take S of t, it can be an arbitrary waveform. So what you do is, if logic 1 comes, bit 1 comes, you transmit A times S of t, and if 0 comes, you transmit minus A times S of t. That's it. But the basic pulse shape is same for both. For bit 1 and for bit 0, the basic pulse shape is same. The basic pulse shape is the same for both the bit 0 and bit 1. 0. Now if you recollect, you can represent a general binary signal which was the pulse shape S of t as a consequence of such a pulses which are given by S of t, and this I already discussed. Let's say from 0 to t you transmit one pulse, and t to tt you transmit another pulse, and 2t to 3t you transmit another pulse, and so on and so forth. So in this I'll transmit S of t minus LT, and here I'll transmit S of t minus 2LT, and so on. Okay, so therefore you'll get shifted pulses. So if you add all the pulses cumulatively, collectively, then it is going to be summation over S of t minus LT, where L goes from minus infinity to plus infinity, and of course the magnitude is decided by the input bit streams. If it is 1, then you transmit a positive pulse, and if it is negative, then you transmit negative pulse. Let me put A sub L, where AL is your bits, and AL is equal to plus 1 for bit 0. Sorry, for bit 1 you can choose either way also, and AL is equal to minus 1 for bit 0. But S of t minus LT is a basic pulse shape which could be of finite duration or it could be infinite duration. So S of t minus LT is a basic pulse shape, and this pulse shape could be finite duration or infinite duration. Finite duration or infinite duration. When I say finite duration, the example I can take as a rectangular pulse like this. It's a finite duration from 0 to t. Or you can take a Nyquist pulse. Nyquist pulse is an example of infinite duration pulses. Nyquist pulse. And whether it is, let's say, rectangular pulse or Nyquist pulse, it could be anything. So this sequence of positive and negative pulses get corrupted by noise. So you have this no sequence of pulses s of t minus lt, and here a sub l, l runs from minus infinity to plus infinity, and this one is corrupted by noise, corrupted by noise. So that noise is additive, therefore let me put n of t. Okay, and this n of t is given to the matched filter. So this is let me say this is c of t, your transmitted pulse. So c of t, it is corrupted by the noise n of t, and this is what you receive at the receiver, and this is given to the matched filter, where the matched filter is matched to the input pulse s of minus t. So matched filter, and after the matched filter you do the sampling at t equal to 0. If it is 0, then this is correct, and then one more block, that block I will come little later, that is called polarity detector, and after that you announce whether 0 or 1 is detected. So the receiver or demodulator for this kind of digital modulation scheme is obviously very trivial after our discussion of matched filtering. So the sequence of pulses are coming one after another. Okay, it is actually modulated one bit at a time. So in one simple interval 0 to t, you take one bit and modulate the pulse. Okay, if it is 1, then you transmit positive pulse, and if it is 0, you transmit negative pulse. Therefore every incoming pulse excites this matched filter and produces an output which is expected to peak at t equal to capital T. Okay, that we have to remember. See, you have a pulse like this, and the matched filter pulse also like this, and if you take conjugate, then you'll get a triangular pulse like this, and it is expected to peak at t equal to capital T, and this is your 0 and this is your 2t. So the total duration is 2t, and this is 0 to t, 0 to t, and t plus t equal to 2t. When you do the convolution of two pulses which are of duration t and t plus t, then the total convolved pulse width is going to be 2t. Therefore this figure I need to little bit modify. So it is not going to be minus t. Your filter changes as follows: c of t is model contaminated by noise, and the matched filter, instead of putting s conjugate of minus t, let me put capital T minus t, because the peak occurs at capital T. This t comes because the peak occurs at t equal to capital T. Therefore do the sampling at t is equal to capital T. Okay. So this is replaced now. So typically at the end of every bit interval, the output of the matched filter supposed to peak. So this is your pulse interval 0 to t. At the end of each pulse interval, the matched filter is expected to give the peak value. So that's where I sample the output of the matched filter. So wherever the peak occurs, at that time instant we need to do the sampling. And if it was a positive pulse, then I will expect its peak output to be positive. And if it is a negative pulse, if it is a positive pulse, then I expect the peak output to be positive. And if it is negative, then I expect the peak output to be negative. But the basic pulse shape is same whether it is positive or negative. So the matched filter keep on producing the peak value of autocorrelation function. So therefore the matched filter gives autocorrelation function, peak value of the autocorrelation function. The proper way is peak value of the autocorrelation function. You are taking the autocorrelation function between the input signal and the impulse response of the matched filter. And polarity of course will depend on whether AL is positive or negative. If AL is positive, then you'll get positive peak value. If AL equal to negative, that means if you are mapping 0 and this is mapping 1, then you'll get negative peak value. negative peak value. So polarity will depend on whether AL is positive or it is negative. So if you get a positive large peak, that implies, let's say, 1 is transmitted, and if you get a negative large peak, that implies, let's say, 0 is transmitted. Now I want the peak to occur at t equal to capital T. So this is a point at which we want the peak to occur at the end of every pulse interval, symbol interval. So the impulse response in the matched filter should be, in that case, S of capital T minus small t. And really speaking, I would like it to be peaking every t seconds, and I would like to keep on sampling the output of the matched filter every t seconds. However, you must note that the fact that it is peaking at t equal to LT, that is every t seconds. The peak value occurs at every t equal to LT. That implies every t seconds it is peaking. Okay, and it doesn't imply that the matched filter output is 0 elsewhere, right? Suppose if you take this pulse duration, at the end of the pulse duration I'll get peak pulse, and it doesn't mean that in the next bit interval it is not producing any output. It doesn't mean that it is giving 0 response to the next pulse response, right? So therefore, even if your pulse is of finite duration, the minimum duration of the matched filter output will be 2t. If we take 0 to t, the minimum duration of the output of the matched filter is going to be 2t. Output of the matched filter, 2t, and the peak occurs at t, and after that symbol interval also it is producing a non-zero output. Suppose the pulse is strictly of duration t, each incoming pulse has strictly of duration t, then what is the minimum width of the matched filter output? It is going to be 2t. Because the impulse response is of duration t, and the input pulse is of duration t, the convolution will be of duration 2t, sum of these two durations. Okay, so although it is peaking at t equal to capital T, and t equal to 2t, and t equal to 3t, and so on and so forth, we do have a distinct possibility of intersymbol interference here, because the output of the peak, the output of the matched filter will interfere the subsequent pulse intervals. Okay, therefore the matched filter response does not become 0 in the next bit interval. So it remains finite in the next bit interval also, and so on. So for subsequent bit intervals. So what we have to make sure is that the output of the pulse, the output of the matched filter pulse should not interfere the next pulse. Okay, next interval. So this is your input pulse, and this is your impulse response, and this is your output pulse. So the shape of the output pulse or the output pulse should not interfere the next bit interval. That is the very important thing I should consider, irrespective of the impulse response and the input pulse shape. That is least bother about that. You choose whatever the pulse you like it, the input pulse and the impulse response. But finally what I am interested in is, at the output, the pulse should not go and interfere the next symbol interval. Okay, so at the sampling instant, the Nyquist criterion is satisfied. So the output pulse should satisfy Nyquist criterion. Whenever the pulse satisfies the Nyquist criterion, then it will not interfere the other symbols. Okay, subsequent symbols. Therefore, this is something called intersymbol interference. So to avoid the intersymbol interference, we need to consider, or we need to design a pulse such that it should satisfy the Nyquist criterion or Nyquist criteria. So whenever a pulse satisfies the Nyquist criterion, then you can think that it will not interfere with the other pulses in the subsequent intervals. At the sampling instant, the Nyquist criterion should be satisfied. When the output of the matched filter is peaking due to the current pulse, the response of the same matched filter to all previous pulse should be 0. Okay, so whenever, suppose let's say it is peaking at this point 0 to t, and this response, so this maximum response, let me draw the figure here. Okay, and you'll get a response like this, and this response should be 0 in the next interval, in the next time instant. So we don't care what the response is at other time instants. Okay, so it should be very less. So this is something we are familiar with, and we have discussed that separately at length. Okay, so when discussing the transmission of pulses in a band limited channels, so we are familiar with that fact. Now see, this is a sampled value. You are sampling at t, so this is 0, this is 0, this is t, and this is 2t. The total duration is 2t, and this is a sampled value. If there is no noise, then what will happen? The sampled value completely determined by the input signal amplitude. No noise implies sampled value is purely determined by the input signal amplitude and impulse response. But in reality, what happens is the input signal is added by noise. Okay, so there will be variation around this peak value due to the noise, due to the presence of noise. So this peak value, there will be some variation due to noise in practice, because of the noise. If there is a noise, then the sampled value will not be the true value. Therefore, one will not get the true peak value which would have expected if signal alone was the input to the matched filter. So if the signal alone was the input to the matched filter, then there would be no problem. Okay, so you will get the perfect signal value, very clear, nice, clean sampled value. But in practice, that is not going to happen. Since the signal is associated with noise, this peak value also associated with some variability due to the noise. See, if there is no noise, then your peak value will be like this. But this is no associated with noise. Therefore, your pulse will be like this. Therefore, here also you will get like this. This is t, this is 0, this is t, and this is 2t, like this. Therefore, this peak value, there is some variation in the peak value. And this is no noise, and this is a true peak value. But if the signal is contaminated by noise, then the pulse will looks like this. Because of that, this is your output of your matched filter. This is the output of matched filter. Therefore, some variation in the sampled value. Okay, so since a signal is associated with the noise, this peak value will also be associated with some variability due to noise, and with some variance. How it varies, how much it varies, it depends on the amount of variance. Okay, therefore there is a need to put a threshold detector after the sampler. Okay, so the detailed or complete diagram is as follows. You have the transmitted signal C of t, which is transmitted over a channel, and it is contaminated by noise N of t, and this is given to the matched filter. The matched filter is matched to let me write properly, because you are taking the sample at t, capital T minus t. Take conjugate of this if it is a real, and then do the sampling at t is equal to LT, and because of the noise, you have to put a polarity detector, and the output will be 0 or 1. Now if the peak is positive, take one decision, and if the peak is negative, take one decision. That means you compare with the threshold detector, okay, polarity detector, okay. And if it is positive, then if it is if the peak is positive, take one decision, and if the peak is negative, then take the other decision. So this makes sense. Suppose if the peak is positive, then declare 1 was transmitted. And if the peak is negative, declare 0 was transmitted. Now this is called a decision statistic. The sampled value is called a decision statistic. Okay, and the sampled value is called the decision statistic, and on the basis of which or on the basis of the sampled value you take a decision. And this is the terminology that I picked up from detection theory. The sampled values which are coming over here every t seconds, and are called decision statistics, because over the over basis of the sampled value you are going to decide whether 0 or 1 was transmitted. So broadly the scheme for antipodal demodulation is very clear now. So the important point to remember is signal pulse at the matched filter output should be Nyquist pulse, because it should not interfere the other symbols or other pulses. The first point is signal pulses matched filter output should be a Nyquist pulse. Nyquist pulse. If it is not Nyquist, then it will go and interfere the subsequent pulses. That is the reason. Therefore, choose S of t such that your output of your matched filter is going to be input pulse S of t convolved with the matched filter impulse response, and this is going to be raised, because raised cosine pulse is an example of Nyquist pulse. It can be anything. Raised cosine pulse, or broadly I can say Nyquist pulse. Raised cosine pulse is an example of Nyquist pulse. Why do we need this condition? To avoid the inter-symbol interference. Because the signal pulses at the output of the matched filter, the signal pulses at the output of the matched filter must not exhibit inter-symbol interferences. So therefore the signal should be so designed in this scheme of things such that the output of matched filter should not go and interfere the other symbol intervals, but it should peak at every bit intervals, every symbol interval or every t seconds. Okay. So in that way we should choose the signal pulse shape for antipodal signaling, and the pulse shape should be so designed in that way. So that's it. And then one more point we assumed here that I did not mention here, that is we did not consider a channel distortion. We assume the channel is ideal. Okay, so we have modeled the channel for our discussion as ideal. Okay, the channel does not distort the signal. So if the channel also distort the signal, then the receiver structure has to be changed. The same structure we cannot use it. In our discussion I did not consider any channel distortion. Okay, I consider only the additive white Gaussian noise. So this channel distortion I am not considering at this moment in this lecture. I have idealized the channel, idealized the discussion a bit by assuming that the channel is ideal, and therefore the waveform does not change. What are the waveform you transmit, the same waveform will be received at the receiver, and there is no channel distortion, but only the noise will get added to the signal. Okay, so therefore the ISI that we have taken care of is one which could have been influenced by the transmitter filter and the receiver filter. The ISI is influenced by the transmitter filter, because after all we are going to consider only the band limited channel. So in that case we need to consider this ISI. If you have infinite bandwidth, fine, no problem, you can transmit, you don't need to consider the intersymbol interference and the receiver filter. These two are very important while designing while talking about the ISI. And if there is such a distortion, we have to take care of one separately, and our receiver becomes more complex if you want to consider distortions. Okay, and then finally, so some important points I want to summarize here. So in the input you have sequence of pulses. For every bit interval you are sending one pulse, so that is denoted by S of t minus LT. For every bit interval the basic pulse shape is the same, and the polarity is dependent by AL, and L goes from minus infinity to plus infinity, and AL equal to 1 for bit 1 and AL equal to 0 for bit 0. So this is your transmitted pulse, and this pulse is contaminated by noise N of t, and this is given to the matched filter. It is matched the same pulse S of capital T minus small t. This is I have taken t because the matched filter peaks at every t seconds. Therefore I put this t, and you do the sampling t equal to LT, and because the peak value is changed with respect to the noise, because the signal is associated with the noise, therefore the sampled value also will be associated with the noise, and there is some variance in the output, variability in the output sampled value. How much it varies, that depends on the noise, the variance of the noise. Therefore you put a polarity detector here, and if it is positive decide 1, and if it is negative you decide 0. Okay, so in fact one can show that this type of demodulator is optimum from the probability of error point of view in Gaussian noise. So this is the optimum demodulator. Okay, from the probability of error point of view in Gaussian noise. So this is an assumption. In Gaussian noise only we can say this filter is this demodulator is optimum. Okay, so I have discussed one basic realization for antipodal signaling, which is essentially that each incoming pulse is matched filtered and its polarity is detected at the sampling instant, and that's what the optimum demodulator turns out to be. Okay, and if you want you can show that this demodulation scheme is optimum from the error probability point of view or probability of error point of view in the presence of Gaussian noise. In the next lecture I am going to talk about the passband binary phase shift keying demodulator. Here I have taken only the baseband pulse. The input is baseband. Look at here, the input is baseband pulse. So in the next class in the next lecture let me consider the baseband pulse S of t minus LT is modulated by the carrier cos of 2 pi f naught t. Okay, and some polarity AL. So this is the passband pulse. So if you have the passband pulse, then how your matched filter structure changes, and how do you do the demodulation, how do you carry out the demodulation, and how do you decide whether 1 was transmitted, 0 was transmitted. So that is a topic of interest in the next lecture. So at this point let me stop. Thank you very much.